Hey, what's up, fam? This is Zeal Brothers back once again for another video, and I want to make this video about the nurse shortage. Now, there have been a lot of articles about the shortage of nurses, and the reason that there's a shortage of nurses, they say, is because hospitals have not guaranteed safe conditions for nurses. Well, hate to tell you, but that's not the reason. The reason that there's a nurse shortage are two primary reasons. The first one is COVID, and the second one is vaccination. Now, what does COVID have to do with it? Well, COVID has to do with this. Some people might say unsafe conditions, but let's just face it. Nurses have been the ones that have been at the on the front line dealing with all kind of diseases. Some of them are contagious, and they just have to deal with that. And that's a risk that they put themselves in. And I applaud nurses for doing that, right? Just like I applaud policemen for being on the front lines to deal with the people that nobody else can deal with. Nurses deal with the health conditions that a lot of times are self-caused in many ways, right? So they're dealing with people who drug themselves. They're dealing with people who overdose, people who drink themselves to the point that they're almost about to die, people who eat themselves to the point that they're almost about to die. They are dropped off at the hospital, and these nurses have to deal with them. But there's a few problems with why there's a shortage of nurses, and I'm talking about the virus and the vaccines. Let's talk about the virus first. The virus has created conditions that have made being a nurse not as enjoyable as it used to be. So, for example, you talk about mask policies. Now, we know from looking at masks that most masks don't work, but most nurses are required to wear and enforce these rules that some of them don't even believe work. And so that has made their employment less enjoyable. The added risk that they're taking by dealing with the virus has not usually been met with an up in pay, right? So many nurses are asked to do more, and they're not necessarily getting a commensurate pay for what they're doing. And the second reason is these vaccines, right? A lot of nurses see people react to the vaccines, and they see things the rest of us don't see, things that the media doesn't report. And as a result of this, a lot of them don't want to take the vaccine. Now, I wouldn't say it's the majority, but there's a significant number of them that don't. And when you already have a shortage, right? And let's think about it, especially in America, we have health problems all around. We got an obesity problem. We have this virus that is going all around. We need more medical people to deal with it. It's probably the dumbest time to cut people. But what are we doing? We are deliberately pushing people out of the profession because they choose not to take a vaccine that, as of a few weeks ago, was simply experimental. And here's the thing. You can't do anything dumber than that. Now, this is similar to the Defund the Police movement. If you really were somebody who was concerned about bad police treatment, you should be somebody that should be for funding the police, because a defunded police means a short-staffed police. A short-staffed police means a stressed police. A stressed policeman is more likely to be a hair trigger, right? And a stressed, ready to pull the trigger policeman means more black people get shot because we call the police more than other people do. So if you really cared about the black community and you really cared about problems related to police, defunding the police should be the last thing you do. But what do we see? We see people who are pushing and claiming that they want to support the black community, pushing for defund the police. On this case with nurses, you got people who say they care a lot about people's health. They care about the community's health. If you care about the community's health, why would you be cutting the number of medical professionals that are out there? So nursing is not an easy profession to necessarily get into because you have to have a certain amount of training. You can't just walk off the street and be a nurse. And because of the training that it takes, it is especially stupid to limit the profession to people who choose to or choose not to take a vaccine. And in many cases, the companies and the hospitals that are pushing this don't give a crap whether the nurse is pregnant, don't give a crap about their personal history, don't give a crap about whether they have had the virus or not. So that's why we have a nurse shortage. It's because hospital stupidity. And a lot of these companies, and hospitals are companies, a lot of these companies are not being held accountable for their stupid policies. So we have a worker shortage throughout the country, and we got all these companies that are pushing people to get vaccines that they don't want. Now, some people do want them. And if you do want them, I applaud you, right? If you don't want them, I also applaud you, because guess what? It's your own personal decision to make. Those of us who have already got the virus and suffered heavily for it feel that we don't necessarily need a vaccine to give us immunity to something that we already have natural immunity to. Artificial immunity that lasts less than natural immunity does by every study on the subject. But hey, what can I say? If you claim to care about medical outcomes and then you are for cutting more nurses, you are an idiot. And that's a Zeal Brothers take. And guess what? We always gonna give you the truth real. You may not necessarily like it if you on the other end of the spectrum, but hey, get smarter. That's the answer. Get smarter and subscribe, because maybe you'll get smarter if you watch more videos.